Good afternoon and welcome to the June 18th regular meeting of the Parks, Recreation and Community Services Commission. May we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Sasatrian?
Present.
Alfayan?
Present.
Wolfson is absent. Wu?
Present.
President Michaels.
Present.
The agenda for the June 18, 2018 regular meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on or before Friday, June 15, 2018. Item 2, upcoming council agenda items.
President Michaels, members of the commission, on July 10th, we have 3 items. The first one being a commendation for our cruise night sponsors. The second, Parks Make Life Better Month proclamation. And the third will be a report amending Gwen Pugh's contract for design construction documents for the Dugmagian Nature Education Center. And on July 24th, we have acceptance of state EDD funds in the amount of $500,000 to the workforce, Verdugo Workforce Investment Board.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next is item 3, introductions and presentations at A, recognition of Glendale Sunrise Rotary Club for their donation of $500 for summer day camp scholarships.
President Michaels, members of the commission, I'd like to invite Battalion Chief Cody Smith from the Glendale Sunrise Rotary. Chief Smith contacted us about a few weeks ago wanting to donate $500 to our scholarship program for the summer day camps. And with the funds, they are paying for 2 campers for 4 weeks to participate at Maple Park. We currently have a total of 12 scholarships that were given for this year, 5 at Pacific and 7 at Maple. And I would like to thank the Glendale Sunrise Rotary for their generous donation of $500.
Chief Smith.
Commissioners, thank you for allowing me the time to do this. And again, on behalf of the Glendale Sunrise Rotary, we would like to submit a check for $500 to sponsor 2 campers for this summer camp. As part of our youth committee, we've sponsored a number of children from the community, not only in summer camps, but to the Rotary Youth Leadership Academies, et cetera. And we've seen very outstanding results from the citizens and communities that take benefit from this. So again, on behalf of the Glendale Sunrise Rotary, thank you for accepting it, and we hope that it is put to good use, as Mr. Honig said.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the commission, I'd like to thank you for your generous contribution to allow 2 children to attend the summer camps. And would the other commissioners like to join me, and we can exchange a certificate of appreciation for your efforts?
Thank you very much.
Okay. You are right.
I apologize for taking up the extra time. We'll do each. How's that? Yes. Thank you. Commissioners, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We ready for the next item?
Sure. Next on the agenda is item 4, commission staff comments.
Are there any comments at this time?
President Michaels, if no one else has any comments, I,
Please.
as usual, have a series of events to announce. So on every Wednesday at Maple Park Community Center, we offer Tea Night Out. So in between now and the next meeting, we're going to offer it on June 20th and 27th and July 11th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then we also offer Tea Night Out at Pacific Community Center every other Friday, June 22nd and July 6th from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. On June 23rd and July 7th, we're going to be offering a World Cup viewing party at the Maryland Paseo at 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. On June 23rd, Street Food Cinema will be showing The Goonies at Central Park. Doors open at 5:30 p.m. Live music starts at 6:30 p.m. and the movie starts at 8:30 p.m. Street Food Cinema is then offering My Girl on July 7th at Central Park at the same times. The summer concert series starts July 11th from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Verdugo Park, and that day Verdugo Swing Society is kicking it off. Street Food Cinema is then back, this time at Brand Park on July 14th, showing Romeo and Juliet. On July 7th, we're having an experimental forest work day at La Tuna Hostetter Fire Road intersection from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. At least that's where they're meeting. Riverwalk work day on July 14th at Glendale Narrows Riverwalk from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. On July 15th, San Francis Mystic Artists in Japan will be at Brand Tea House from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we're back here on July 16th for another commission meeting at 2:30 p.m. And for any questions, the viewing public can call 818-548-2000 or visit www.glendaleca.gov/residents/calendar.
Thank you. The next item, please.
Next on the agenda is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The director may refer the matter to the proper section for investigation and report.
We have one card. Catherine Yurka.
Good afternoon, President Michaels and members of the Commission. My name is Kathy Yurka, and I'm here to talk again briefly about Verdugo Park on behalf of the Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association. I just wanted to raise some concerns about the health of the trees in the park and the native sycamores, and to ask for your help. Many of the protected indigenous sycamores in the park appear to be stressed. They have, as you can see here, noticeably thin foliage, and the ends of the branches, of many of the branches, are bare of leaves altogether. These photos were taken on June 12th, and by this time in the season, these should be pretty lushly leaved. And some of the sycamores in the park are, and the sycamores on private property around the park are as well. So it's not a problem with the recent weather. It seems to be specific to some of the trees. 4 sycamores have recently been removed in Verdugo Park because of decay. There are, I'll just show a few more pictures. You can see the bareness. It's a different tree. This is affecting several trees. There are also several large brown patches in the turf, which suggest a problem of underwatering. In the background there, you can see this tree, which was a recently planted tree that's dead. I communicated my concerns to Parks, and Coco Panosian kindly got in touch and said they would check the irrigation system, which I think is actually happening right now, and that they were working with their consultant to do a reassessment of the condition of the trees, but there was no timeline for the reassessment. And this is one of these I'm glad I live in Glendale moments, because I objected, given the condition of the trees, of some of these trees, and Mr. Panosian wrote to say that they would begin the reassessment right away and that it should be completed by June 30th, so thank you. I'm here because my neighbors, my HOA, and I are all concerned about the condition of these trees. And we're just hoping that you might look into what the protocols are for identifying stressed trees and making sure that they're looked into. I don't know whether Parks has a certified arborist. I do know that this is where the maintenance facility is, and there's also, I believe, someone living at the park in a house. So there's staff in the park every day, and so I hope that there might be some mechanism by which there can just be visual inspections of the trees. Now, it's not always the case that you can see what's wrong, but I think these examples are, it's pretty clear that they're stressed. I also do, well, we have some concerns about the consultant. This is the same one who stapled signs. I showed this last time, two stapled signs into the protected trees to announce that they were being sprayed for invasive insects. Of course, trees are more susceptible to insects if their bark is damaged by things like staples. So it's a little difficult to have confidence in them. So I hope that the city will review their work very carefully, and also that I hope that they don't have the contract to remove dying or dead trees, that the work would be performed by some other company. I would also finally suggest that Dan Hardgrove, our very busy Assistant Director of Public Works, might be asked for his advice. He's a certified arborist and past president of the California Urban Forest Council, and he's a really valuable resource for the city. These trees are a community treasure, as you heard over and over again a month ago, and it's important to us that the city does right by them, and I know it's important to you all and to city staff as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would staff be able to respond?
Yes, sure. President Michaels, members of the commission, we appreciate Ms. Yurka reaching out to us. As she mentioned, we did lose 4 trees. 3 of them we have been watching closely because we had identified decay. And our process is not to remove the trees as soon as we identify certain decay or issues with the tree. We give it time, we monitor it closely. And the 3 that we had to remove had hazards that we felt were unsafe. So we consulted with our colleagues in Public Works, Mr. Dan Hargrove. We consult with them all the time about what actions to take, and those 3 trees were removed. Now, as far as the 4th tree, it actually fell on its own. And once it fell out, we had our consultant come in and look at it. We did have significant decay in that tree as well. Hence, in talking to our director, he directed us to get our consultant on board immediately, and we are doing an assessment of all the trees, as Ms. Yurka said. The job started last week, and we're hoping to have an early assessment completed by the end of June, so we can identify the trees that are in dire need of help, the ones that can be saved, if there are any concerns by them about certain trees. We have fixed irrigation. We have actually added more time to the daily, and I direct the staff to add 1 additional day to be able to get more water onto the trees and onto the turf at Verdugo Park. And we work closely with Public Works, and Dan Hargrove is aware of the situation that we're in. The consulting team that we hired is WCA. The individual conducting the assessment is a master arborist, master certified arborist, which is like the black belt of arborists. So he's very aware of, his credentials go very high. He's highly respected in his community. And we're hoping this assessment will give us an idea of what actions we need to take as a department to move forward with, preserving our trees in the park as best as we can.
Well, I know the date of June 30th was proposed. If that could come back to the commission for our July meeting as just a brief report, and to extrapolate that process of how it would affect or be done in other parks as well.
President Michaels, I believe we could do that. Next month, we give you a brief report on the assessment as to what we found and what recommendations the consultant gave us. And it's something definitely we can look at, expanding at other facilities. We had done initial assessment of all of our trees when we did the inventory 3 years ago. We had addressed all the trees that required to be removed, as you know, as part of our process. We had taken care of trees that needed to be trimmed heavily, pruned heavily. Trees do continue to die as we go along, so as we notice things, we do address them. And as we get closer to other facilities, we'll be looking closely at other trees as well.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the commissioners?
I have a quick question. How often is the inventory performed?
President Michaels, Commissioner Wu, our original time we did it was about 3 years ago. We like to do an assessment every 5 years of the trees inventory. This is new to our department because we had not done inventory before. And since the funding became available, we began the inventory. We've done a much better job of keeping track of what we've done at every facility with our trees, and we will look at renewing the inventory every 5 years to make sure we've captured all the work. It's kind of another time where you do reassessment of the trees as well. And of the trees that we said we're watching closely, were identified as watch closely so we can keep track of the decline of that specific tree and, take appropriate action when necessary. So likely every 5 years we do an assessment. The reason why we expedite at Verdugo is because of the tree that came down and the other trees that we had to remove. We wanted to make sure we are in a better position, so for one, we don't lose trees, and two, we don't have any injuries to children or patrons at the facility.
Have we been able to take a look at the newly planted trees as to why they're dying, or they're not?
The one that was in the picture was likely a water issue. Hence, we directed staff to fix the irrigation to make sure we increase it. Every tree that dies, we do replant. So we intend to replant the trees that had died in that facility and in all other facilities. But the one in question was a water issue that we had that had died, the newly planted tree.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, we'll move on to the next item.
Next is item 5, consent items. At A, approval of the minutes of the commission regular meeting held on May 21st, 2018.
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioners Asatrian,
Yes.
Kafayan,
Yes.
Wolfson is absent, Wu,
Abstain.
and President Michaels.
Yes.
Item 7, reports information only. At A, Maple Park Community Center annual report.
Good afternoon, President Michaels and members of commission. My name is Kenneth Kahn. I supervise and oversee Maple Park Community Center. I'm just here to give you a brief overview of Maple Park Community Center and the programs and services that it provides. Maple Park is a heavily used park and community center servicing the residents of South Glendale. The center underwent a large scale renovation in 2010 and then reopened to the public in the summer of 2011. Maple Park offers many free programs to the general public, as well as it's open for private facility rentals. So with that, we've put together a little slideshow that we'll get into. That's a front view of the side view of the park. It's 820 East Maple Street, if you don't know where we are. Some of the programs that we provide, some of the facilities that we have within the center, a full court gymnasium equipped with a kitchenette that can be used for sports and special events, and also facility rentals. 2 large meeting rooms equipped with amenities such as tables and chairs, television, video room setups, and so forth. We do have a full kitchen downstairs that basically has a warming oven, counter space, and a refrigerator as well. We do have a computer lab. A lot of the youths in the area don't have internet access at home, believe it or not, so the computer lab offers the kids a chance to do homework, and even residents a chance to research and so forth. We recently had our computers upgraded by our IS department, which we're very thankful for. We also have a recreation room complete with ping pong, air hockey, foosball, and a video gaming station. This is the gymnasium. This is probably the crown jewel of the facility, heavily used, whether it's for drop-in play or facility rentals and so forth. This is the computer lab that I had mentioned earlier. We have 15 stations. Like I said, we were recently able to get our computers updated by our IS department, which the residents are very thankful for. Our meeting room, this is our main meeting room downstairs. We use this room for a lot of different events. We just had a meeting for Measure A within this room, Proposition A, and we also use it for facility rentals and our day camp and so forth. This is the rec room. This is available for the youth to use that have an activity card. It gives them a good place to come after school and just, take advantage of the amenities that are offered within the center. This is the same gym that you saw earlier, just transformed into a birthday party. So, why go to Chuck E. Cheese when you can come to Maple Park, and have your party? This is that same meeting room set up for a party. Like I said, we're able to transform the room from meeting rooms to parties to Club Maple and so forth. This is the gym, the same gym. This is the chess tournament that we had. This has become a quarterly event, very popular. Takes place at Maple Park. Hundreds of kids enjoy the center and all that it has to offer. Outdoor, within the park, we do have a full regulation-sized tennis court open to the public, first come, first serve. If you walk by Maple Park in the morning, you will hear the older gentlemen grunting and getting their workout on. We do have walking paths that were put in with benches. There's a multi-use field that provides space for sports and special events. We do have picnic tables as well that are first come, first serve, free to the public. Children's play area with ADA accessible features, outdoor exercise equipment, and then new shade structures, which are very, very popular, especially for the gentlemen that, like to hang at the park and just play different games and so forth. This is a shot of our tennis court, which was resurfaced a couple years ago, which is still in good shape. These are the walking paths, which also serve as driving paths for the PD, which makes it easier for them to drive on the park and, locate any individuals that they need to locate. This is our multi-use field. We also have our One Glendale sports program that takes place on this field when they're doing soccer. It's a good, open space to use. This is the children's play area, which will be updated with a Shane's Inspiration Playground, which will be coming very soon. This is the outdoor exercise equipment, also very popular for the area residents. It just gives them a chance when they're doing their daily walk to just hop on the equipment. No gym membership required. You just hop on. Another shot of the opposite side of the park with the outdoor exercise equipment. These are the shade structures that were put in. These are very popular, especially for hot summer days. It's another angle of the park. Center-based programs at the center. We do have Tot Time, which is a program for toddlers, Mondays and Wednesdays, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Maple Park. There's drop-in basketball and volleyball offered for adults and for youth. And then, as I mentioned, the recreation room that offers all the amenities. We do have a partnership with GCC where we have ESL classes that are held at the center. And then a very popular day camp, which is taking place actually now as we speak, which is pretty much sold out for the entire summer. Club Maple also takes place at Maple Park Community Center every Thursday, 5:30 to 8 p.m. The program provides adults with intellectual disabilities the chance to have social interactive programming. Staff members provide free drop-in activities which are age-appropriate in a friendly and safe environment. That's a picture of our Club Maple Thanksgiving party, a very popular program. This is the Maple Stars Day Camp, which, like I said, gives the residents a chance to drop their kids when they're working during summer. Very popular program. Upcoming, earlier this year, we were able to add Zumba classes at Maple Park, which started on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 10:30. Very popular program. Teen Night Out was also added in March, which is every Wednesday from 4 to 6. And then once Shane's Inspiration is up and going, we will be providing programming at the park as well. Questions?
Doesn't appear so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next is item 7B, section activity reports at 1, workforce development.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Judith Velasco. I am the Workforce Administrator. I oversee all the programs at the Verdugo Job Center that were located at 1255 South Central. I'm here today to give you an overview of our success so far for the RISE program. The RISE program stands for Regional Intermediate Intervention Services to Employment. So basically, it's a program funded through Measure H, LA County, to deliver pilot work experience for homeless individuals in our region. So what is RISE? Last year, our section submitted a grant proposal to Los Angeles County Department of Aging, Workforce Development, and Community Services for $100,000 to deliver 13 individuals who are homeless in our region with paid work experience. These individuals will be paid $12 an hour for about 160 hours. And our outcomes for this program was to have at least 11 of the 13 participants in full-time employment And really, the target was to address those individuals who are homeless and they need experience in a work environment. So our workforce section has always provided employment services to various populations, specifically people with disabilities, youth, individuals who are low income. So this is the first time we had a specific program targeted for individuals who are homeless. So our model consisted of basically what we've delivered in other programs: case management, work readiness, paid work experience, supportive services, and job placement. What case management is we assigned a staff to work individually with these individuals to assess their needs beyond employment. Every individual in the program received work readiness training, and for the most part, any individual in our programs receive workshops on how to develop what we call soft skills, how to develop a resume, how to present themselves in the best possible light inside a work environment. The paid work experience was the first time we've delivered a paid work experience for adults, and it's been a very successful model because these individuals who are homeless not only receive payment for every hour they were at our center, but they also receive supportive services, which was meals. They would come to our center at 7 a.m. and receive a light breakfast. Then through our staff, they were transported to various parks facilities to do basic cleanup. They did this again for 160 hours, and we started the program earlier this year. Out of the first group, which you'll see in the next slide, we've had a great success rate. But again, we've also encountered some challenges that we didn't have in other programs just because this was our first pilot. So as we implemented a work experience program for individuals who are homeless, we realized that we had to expand our soft skills training. So we have a traditional soft skills training that we go over a set curriculum, but these individuals also needed assistance with their financials. So we brought in other resources such as the Glendale Federal Credit Union to conduct training on how to save money management, how to apply for credit cards, and really sharing with these individuals best practice. So once you start earning money, what's the best way to start investing that money? We also, throughout the duration of the program, increased our one-to-one case management appointments. So we realized that our focus has always been employment, but these individuals needed more than just employment skills. They needed to build their self-confidence. They needed to feel that they can be reintegrated into the work environment. So we had a lot of presenters come to talk about self-esteem and self-confidence and really the reintegration of a work environment. And again, a lot of the individuals in the program, we felt that they could benefit from intense counseling more so than our staff can offer. So we really focus on a lot of mental health services, and that's something we want to continue to grow as this program expands. We increased their hours on the work site slowly, so people were at different parks facilities for about anywhere between 4 to 7 hours. And initially, since it's a pilot, we try to ease the work experience, but all the participants were very eager and they wanted the hands-on work experience, so that's what we try to focus on. So the first cohort, a total of 13 participants. The first cohort were 5 individuals. They started February 20th, and they finished their work experience of 160 hours on April 20th. 4 completed successfully the 160 work hours. 1 completed 120 work hours and dropped out of the program, and they didn't actually contact us back, which again, just to make note, we've had work experience programs before, so we were anticipating some dropout rates, which we do with all of our programs. Out of the 5 participants, 3 obtained housing. 1 received a housing voucher and is trying to find an apartment with the housing voucher, and 1 is currently looking for housing. So in terms of employment, 2 were recently hired for seasonal laborer. I know it says seasonal custodial worker. That's an error under our department. 1 is working full-time in hospitality, and again, we emphasized a lot of customer service skills in our training. 1 is working with staff to find full-time employment, and 1 unfortunately has been out of contact, and there's no update on that 1 person. We did enroll 1 individual in short-term vocational training for Microsoft Office, and 1 we also were able to pay for Class A license, and he's currently a shuttle driver. So we've seen success in terms of employment through this pilot program. Now, the second group that started in April, we've ran into a little bit more challenges. So everybody enrolled in this program, they have to go through life scan and background check before they're actually at any parks facility. So far for the second group, we had 2 who completed 160 hours, and 1 just started a week ago, their 160 hours. 1 was set to start, but they did not show up for work, and 5 are still pending clearance for live scan. Certain challenges were, since they have to go through a live scan drug test, 2 did not pass the drug test. 5 dropped out due to medical issues. 1 moved to another county, and 2 were a no-call or no-show. So the first cohort was a little bit more smooth in terms of the outreach and the participants who started and ended. The second group was a little bit more of a challenge, but again, we feel that our success we built from the first cohort is allowing us to see other resources we need to bring in order to continue the success of this program. So what are the next steps? We are still recruiting for this program in order to successfully have 13 participants finish the 160 hours. It is a process, like I said, everybody goes through live scan. Live scan and background check can take anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks. We are aggressively outreaching to different organizations that work with individuals who are homeless. Right now, to date, 5 individuals have completed live scan and drug test, and we're waiting for the results. So as soon as we get a clearance from the results, they can start at a different parks facility immediately. So what have we learned from this model? We've learned that providing a paid work experience for populations with barriers really is effective because it motivates these individuals to come to work on time and to really learn and embrace what they're learning. The future program design, as if we get additional money from Los Angeles County, will include a social worker component. Because our staff, as I mentioned, we're trained in providing employment counseling, resume writing, workshops on cover letters, how to prepare for an interview, but there are other services that our staff are not trained, as a social worker would be trained to, that would benefit this population and our other populations as well. So we're looking at having a part-time social worker similar to the model that the library has, that they have a part-time social worker at their main library. Food and transportation are key elements that are needed for this population. So we provided a light breakfast and a lunch during their participation in the program. And obviously, we've never provided food before in any of our programs, but it was a key to the success for them to participate and for them to be successful. We also provided transportation to the different parks facilities. So we had a van come, and we had a staff member who supervised their work at the field at the different parks facility, and they drove the van. And again, it built teamwork and leadership that they were transported as a group, they ate as a group, they had lunch as a group, everything they did together, and that we saw motivated them and provided each other support throughout the program. So comprehensive support system for populations with barriers work. This is a population, again, we only serve 13 individuals, so it's a small number, and we provided intensive support in various areas. Future programs, we really hope to introduce our work-based model at different conferences because we do think it's a best practice, especially the support we receive from our own department, I think should be commended. Not a lot of cities are doing that, and I believe what I've heard other cities want to copy what has been developed here in Glendale. We're trying to seek other funding to continue and enhance the program, and we want to connect the population to various resources because, again, individuals who are homeless come with an array of different barriers that we want to be able to address, and the funding we receive was limited, and we did have to leverage our existing workforce funding for other needs that they had. So I'm happy to answer any questions on our experience with working with homeless individuals in the pilot. So I'll open up to questions now.
Are there any questions? I think I'm just going to offer the Commission's accolades on this program. The early results look very promising. I think all of us are looking forward to seeing the results continue of Cohort 1 and get a chance to look at the results for Cohort 2.
Great, thank you. I just have one other update to provide on my report regarding the veterans grant that we received. So our section received $500,000 to support 75 veterans in our region, specifically to work with Veterans Village in Glendale, to provide them with employment services, holistic and wellness services through Wellness Works, leadership training through Leadership Pasadena that has a pilot leadership program for veterans, and we hope to bring those results to the commission in future meetings. But we were just awarded that earlier this month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, please.
I apologize. 7B2, Human Services.
Good afternoon, President Michaels, members of the Parks Commission staff. My name is Yvette Samvalian. I oversee the Homeless Continuum of Care programs for the City of Glendale under the Parks Department. Pretty much annually, we come to you before the Commission and give you information on our annual homeless count. The City of Glendale, since the inception of homeless services in 1993, has been lucky enough to compete for national funding and bring into the city about $2.4 to $5 million annually to run homeless programs. But in order for the city to maintain our competitiveness and our outcomes in achieving that, one of the requirements from the Federal Housing Urban Development, part of that is to be able to substantiate the need for homeless services in the city, within our city and our region. And as a result of that, HUD allows us to conduct an annual needs assessment, which requires us to do that last 10 days of January. And this year, for 2018, city staff, along with volunteers, we conducted our homeless count on the night of January 23rd and the day of January 24th. This is one day point in time count, so the report is essentially for one night in the city of Glendale. How many homeless persons do we have that we actually, every single person we talk to, we survey and identify if they're homeless and their specific needs. There is a full report within the submission to you. If you have questions, I can go into the specific reports, but I have a quick PowerPoint presentation for you. As I discussed, the purpose of the count is for us to be able to substantiate the need for the national competition of the funding, to be able to identify the subpopulations related to homeless individuals, persons, families, children, age demographics. What are some of the current recurring challenges we have with the homeless population, what we have in terms of existing resources, and what gap analysis we need to do to be able to develop new homeless programming within the city of Glendale. As each year the needs change, the funding requirements change, and we need to look at what we need to do to end homelessness in this community or in the city. As I discussed earlier, this is required by the Federal Housing Urban Development for all continuum of care jurisdictions that are receiving funding or competing for funding. The city is one of about 48 cities competing for that funding source. And again, we want to be able to develop some programming. Each year there are specific requirements by the federal government in ending homelessness or eliminating homelessness. Most recent requirements is for the city to eliminate homelessness among women by 2020. And so we can get into the details of that as I get into my report. So the count cannot be done alone within staff or the city. We rely very heavily on our volunteers. So we have about 40 volunteers, including between 5 to 10 homeless agencies, congregations, commissioners, council folks joining the effort, bless you, the effort of us going out the night of the count. So the night of the count on the 23rd, staff and volunteers deploy about 7:30. The actual count happens between 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. As long as it needs to be completed to be able for us to cover the entire city of Glendale as we go to the specific identified locations, as well as any areas that we need to work with. The one-day count also includes our police department, Glendale Fire paramedics. We have other support, extensive support from our outreach teams from the community, and everyone is counted who are unsheltered, meaning that they're living on the streets. They don't have resident or staying with anyone. Our emergency shelter programs, we have 2 in the city of Glendale, at a transitional housing program and other programming that we offer, such as food pantry programming. The result of this year is really not to scare anyone, but we have seen an increase with homeless persons in the city of Glendale for this year. We have a total of 260 homeless persons that we actually met that night and the day of that. We went through about 20 to 30 questions with and identified their current status. And this compares to 168 in 2017. So there is a 55% of increase in homelessness in the city of Glendale, just that point in time count. And in terms of annual services to homeless persons in the city, our overall programming serve about 2,500 homeless persons that are unduplicated throughout all of our programming, and maybe over between 10 to 15,000 of services to the duplicated clients. Specifically, key findings of the 2018 homeless count, 199 were identified as adults, ages of between 18 and above. 61 were children. 104 of the 199 were sheltered. And what does that mean? So that means the participants, the 104 persons were sheltered in our emergency shelter programs. Currently, we have 2 emergency shelter programs. One is operated by Ascensia, a 40-bed emergency transition shelter, which is about 16 to 90 days stay for the participants. We also had women and their children fleeing domestic violence served by the YWCA shelter. So that population is considered as sheltered in terms of that. But we also had unsheltered population, and that's 156 persons in the city of Glendale every night sleeping on our streets. That's anywhere around parking structures, anywhere they feel safe, supermarkets. So we found the clients pretty much everywhere within the city, including north and south of the community. Specifically on the homeless count demographics, these are specific requirements of the federal government in terms of what subpopulation HUD looks for, in terms of what we need, they would fund for us for the future. And specifically how to develop programs around the types of population we're dealing with. So in terms of specific programming, of the 260, we had 23% representing children under ages of 18. Of that percentage, 10 were unsheltered. That means 16% of our families are sleeping in their cars on the streets, or on the streets not in their cars. And so 84% are staying at our shelters, at our existing shelters. 51 out of 61, 84% of children that are sheltered, 17 of them are residing in emergency shelter program, and 67% they're residing in transitional housing program. And why do we have this specific data is because even though they're emergency shelter, they're gonna need next level of housing. From emergency, typically they end up at transitional housing. From transitional, families or individuals need permanent subsidized housing or connecting to any type of independent housing. Specifically for the female population, we have 40% of the homeless persons identified as female. The rest 60 identified as male. We do work with some transgender population and coordinate with referral to other programming that offer services. At the moment, we don't have a program that targets the transgender population in the city of Glendale. The critical subpopulation that HUD looks at is what % of our population is chronically homeless. And there is a long definition of chronically homeless, but I'll basically explain to you quickly what that means. It just means anyone who has been homeless at least 1 year or more and has had specific disability, such as substance abuse, mental health, co-occurring disabilities, veterans status, or domestic violence, sexual assaults, or other physical disabilities. Most of our chronic homeless population that we had identified, the 25%, have been on our streets for more than a decade and have been working towards with case management and outreach in terms of housing as an outcome, but due to resources and availability of housing, it's been a little bit of challenge. Of the 199, 22% of our persons experiencing homelessness is due to domestic violence. So they flee their batterer, but they're homeless. And so figure out what we need to do with the domestic violence population is a challenge because the current funding that we apply under the Housing Urban Development does not fund domestic violence, specifically transitional housing programs. That had gone away for about 2 years ago. We're looking at other funding sources to support that subpopulation. And about veterans in the city of Glendale, while we actually had functional 0 veterans in 2010, we're now back at having additional veterans that are experiencing homelessness in the city of Glendale. 9% of those are male, 2% female, and about 1% transgender veteran subpopulation. Continuing on, in terms of the chronic homeless population, again, as I mentioned earlier, the chronic homeless adults have increased from 2017 to 2018. Again, basically, the longer our clients are on the streets without housing and wraparound services such as mental health, substance abuse, employment, et cetera, the longer term on the street gets them away from them accessing any health services and supportive services. And that becomes harder for us to house them because they need a lot more support than the continuum services can provide. Pretty much on the data demographics, I'm not going to go into the details of the subpopulation, but most of our subpopulation in the city is about white, some African Americans, and the rest of the subpopulation in terms of race is there. With regards to the subpopulation, some of the challenges we have is folks living on the streets that are disabled, our ability to be able to find them appropriate housing in the community, providing them access to emergency shelters and our immediate facility. Some of the challenges we have with clients are specifically being discharged from the care systems, whether it's the foster care, youth care, the criminal or the justice system, and or any hospitalized institutions or mental health systems. Some of those clients are clearly directed and referred out from those systems on the streets without appropriate housing resources, and so they end up in our community, and we have to work with them in terms of housing folks in that aspect of it. Specifically, some of our chronic population. So the serious mental illness subpopulation decreased in 2018. The result of that is that we've placed maybe a dozen of our unsheltered clients this year into housing and have had all of the mental health service providers going to the unit with the clients with the services. Our subpopulation for the chronic also has decreased a little bit, and then we have a little bit of a less folks that are experiencing HIV or are positive with HIV/AIDS in 2018. And it's mainly that what we've done different in the continuum is we have our service providers have connect events or mental health day events, and we bring the resources to the clients rather than expecting the clients to go into the centers and access services. Specifically, I discussed earlier the veteran subpopulation has increased from last year to this year, and so we would need to look at reprioritizing some of our funding and projects associated to the veterans that are in our community, working with, as Judith mentioned, Veterans Village or any other grant staff fund and support veteran services, working with the VA to be able to coordinate the VASH voucher that's available for the veterans. That has been a little bit of a delay in our ability to put our veterans in housing quickly. Some of the factors that we've seen that increased our homeless population this year, critically specifically in the city of Glendale, is that from the folks that we surveyed, 43% of them had become homeless for the first time in the city of Glendale. And according to the self-disclosed information is due to the rents in the community. And so most were sleeping in their cars or around safe zone in the South Glendale area. Persons experiencing homelessness also some were relocated due to the major impact of City of Los Angeles and the community across, working aggressively to dismantle the encampments in the community. So homeless clients typically go through any resources and any available or any city that has services. Homelessness is a regional issue, so I do want to mention that part of my report to you. It is a regional issue, and so they don't just stay in one community because they feel safe. They do go around every other community and wherever services are available. They do feel a lot more safe in this community because of the services, but yet at the same time, it's a regional issue, not just a local jurisdiction. Two other propositions that were passed just recently, Prop 47 and 57, we had early release of inmates. So 22% of our current homeless population that were released from jail or from prison the last year became homeless in our community. And so what we're doing differently is working with our Glendale homeless outreach team with our Glendale Police Department, coordinating that discharge instead of clients being discharged to streets, working to refer them to appropriate programming that receive Prop 47, 57 funding. We currently don't in the city of Glendale. Next steps with regards to what to look for. Again, Glendale has been successful in running homeless programs. The challenge is different every year with regards to what we find out on our assessments. Specifically with our limited type of housing vouchers, our focus has been working with housing our unsheltered population from the streets to scattered site independent housing. We're always looking for landlords who are willing to work with our programs, give us an opportunity to work with the subpopulation. There is a supportive services team assigned to that client between all the nonprofit agencies, city, and also homeless outreach team, and making sure that we coordinate and expand our resources within the continuum. Few things that keep coming up with our federal government down to us with regards to prioritizing subpopulation. Our veterans population, again, needs to be reprioritized in terms of housing first. Moving from veterans, we need to look at zero tolerance policy for having any children or families living on the streets or in the cars. Again, this also gets tied to ending homelessness for women by 2020. Keep working and aligning any available housing and coordinated systems and funding regionally to be able to work through our Housing First model programs. I mentioned the 2020 ending the homeless women, and also keep working with our Glendale Police Department to make sure that if and when they have our clients in our local jail and are coordinating that discharge, that they're discharged to the systems of care, and that coordination happens. Future funding, we hope and look forward to get some additional funding from county on Measure H. And so if and when you have an opportunity to advocate for Measure H, please do so we can get some additional funding locally in our community. We will keep competing for the national funding as long as the city commits to providing the services and has successful outcomes. We will secure that funding. Other than that, at the end of this process, if there's any specific questions, I can answer them now or come back with you on a specific report.
I believe we do have some questions.
Okay. Thanks so much for the detailed report. Can you walk me through the process for domestic violence issues and the calls that you get? How do you refer them out since we don't have anything that's city-specific?
Yes, President Michaels, Commissioner Asatrian. For the domestic violence, persons experiencing domestic violence, there is a crisis hotline that typically our clients are given to call. But specifically in the city of Glendale, YWCA of Glendale, and to some extent Door of Hope are the two agencies that are readily available and experienced to run the domestic violence programming. The crisis hotline case manager will assess the client or the family immediately to see if there's an immediate risk. And if the family is within our community, they will coordinate what's called a safety transfer or a referral to other services outside of our jurisdiction. And that could be Long Beach, outside of state. With regards to specific domestic violence situation, and we had an incident that occurred a couple of weeks ago, if our Glendale Police Department is engaged in a call that results in a domestic violence situation, the parties that are to leave the unit basically pick up whatever they can at that moment and just go with our police department. And then the police department coordinates with our YWCA. The reality is our shelters are full every day. We don't have vacancies at our shelters. So what would happen is the police department would either put them at a motel temporarily and or coordinate with the YWCA to make arrangements for that immediate situation. If there is no immediate threat or risk, they're connected to the counseling services at YWCA's administrative office, and then that case manager works with a exit strategy, planning strategy to be able to exit that family out of that unit and have a different affordable housing coordination with that family.
So does the staff at the city only provide the phone number to the hotline, or do you guys do more than that? Do you follow up after that?
So, Commissioner Asajian, the domestic violence is very unique, and the fact that we are not trained professionals, we don't do a lot of follow-up with the family. What we do is we have a memorandum of understanding with YWCA is that whenever there's a family or a case that's transferred to them, all they can do is inform us that the family has been placed in a safe program or safe shelter. Beyond that, they will not issue any information to us, and we will not issue any information to anyone else. Do we follow up if they sustain their housing or referral from that center? We do, but they can't disclose that information to us.
So the reason that I ask is, I want to say about 10 years ago at this point, about 2008 or 2007, 2008, at the time I was working at ANC Glendale, and our office would receive a lot of calls in that moment where there was a domestic violence occurrence, and a lot of times I would have the office phone transferred to my cell phone, so even on weekends and whatnot, I would take a call from a distressed woman that's out on the street, and they had a very difficult time at that time with the hotline, with getting through to somebody. And even in my many attempts during that time, trying to get through the YWCA and the contacts that I had, was not as a speedy process as you would hope when there's such a dire situation in front of you. We brought together a group of community organizations, and we created the Glendale Domestic Violence Task Force at that time, which included the Women's Commission. I know the Armenian Relief Society was in it. The YWCA was part of that group, and I want to say there was about 7, 8 or various organizations. I know the task force kind of took on how to better mitigate that situation and what role the city would play in it. My bigger concern here, and the reason that I ask this, is because I want to say at least in the last 4 months, I'm starting to hear from folks from different, involvements in organizations, or they're just community individuals that, their attempts at reaching the hotline or assisting somebody, also is very difficult now. So I know what it feels like to kind of go through that process of trying to get a hold of somebody, and, if there's a language barrier, there's somebody on the hotline that's not, being able to communicate properly. I don't know if this is possible from the city, but I'm not asking for it to be something where you're following up to make sure that, where that family is or where the individual is, but rather that, there was proper communication and there was follow through, and something is just being done, whatever that is. And I know a lot of times, especially when the shelters here are full, with the individuals that I dealt with at that time, they didn't want to move away from Glendale, and obviously the YWCA has its own policies with shelters and whatnot, but being able to kind of communicate just information, and not just also, but more importantly, not just handing over a phone number that here's a hotline you can call, and then that's where it really ends. And I don't know if we have funding or programming for that, and I know that the staff here are not equipped to provide, counseling services and all of that, and I know that all of that stuff is very sensitive, but I'm trying to understand, like, at what point do we kind of end? Is it just giving the phone number and then moving on from it, or are we making sure that they're actually, properly being taken care of thereafter?
Commissioner Asatrian, it's a challenging question, and I understand your concern. In order for staff at the city to be able to provide domestic violence services, we would have to go to a 40-hour full week on training to be certified as just domestic violence referring sort of case management team. That's number one. Number two is that we give the crisis hotline because they are trained staff to be able to assess if this particular situation is a crisis because there's an immediate threat, or was it because the domestic violence happened a year ago and the batterer, for example, maybe got drunk and is raising his voice or raising his hand or what have you, and is that something that we need to contact the police, and or is that family at immediate risk and we need to get to that family right away to move them out of that household. So the crisis hotline staff are engaged and they answer the phone call 24 hours. Now, do they have readily available programming to refer the family at that moment? Potentially not. At this moment, the YWCA received some money from the city ESG programming. Again, this is for the housing aspect of it. They're engaging back in our community. In 2007 and 8, YWCA was going through some transitioning at that time with their programming and lost one of their transitional housing programs. So there's a change in their direction and executive board now. With Tara Peterson on board, we will get back with them to ensure that they keep and make it available to answer all of our hotline calls on quickly as possible and engage the families into safe transfer. Having said that, if families do not want to leave Glendale, that is their choice. However, if staff feels that they're unsafe in Glendale and they refuse to go, then at that moment, there's nothing else staff can do if that family decides to stay within that situation, if they don't want to transfer outside of our community. And then I'll direct to our director if there's anything else he'd like to add, or we can certainly follow up with you to see how many calls they get on the next meeting, respond back to you. But I know even when I make a referral, they have to call me back on my private cell phone to make sure that I'm a city staff dealing with a safety transfer issues middle of the night on weekends.
Are there any staff in your department that have that certification?
No.
Okay. Maybe we can just have a follow-up meeting on that. I'll probably ask some questions from the YWCA as well to see what their, referrals and what their situation is with the hotline, because I think one of the main concerns that I received was they had some individuals that had language barriers and specifically spoke Armenian, but there was nobody to translate for them as well. And we're talking about like situations where somebody just like escaped from their home and is like out on the street and so forth. So, and then with respect to the race demographic,
Yes.
is there a reason why we haven't made it Glendale specific and local specific? So I'd like to see a subgroup for the Armenian American community and the Korean community. I understand it's a HUD requirement that you're following and a HUD form, but with some of the centers that I've worked with, we would take the HUD form and then kind of make it particular to our needs. Is there a possibility to revise that and include those in there? And perhaps that's a question for you.
President Michaels, members of the commission, as part of our annual report, we'll leave it to the HUD requirements, but we can internally report out to how many Armenian Americans or Korean Americans are homeless.
So you do keep that?
I'll refer to
During the count, you do have subcategories?
Yes, President Michaels, Commissioner Asatrian, yes, we actually ask what community they came from or what their national origin is, And if they gave us that information, we can extrapolate. I think that this year we actually asked specifically, so maybe next month meeting, I can give that report back to you along with the YWCA's follow-up.
And then you would just kind of bundle that with, for example, if that demographic falls under white, then for the annual report, you basically put it in the white
Right.
category? Okay.
Yeah, so my guess
Or
is
Asian.
from the last 20 years I've been doing this, specifically maybe 10% is Armenian, and maybe 5% is Asian subpopulations. The multiple races, it's hard to extrapolate because they don't always, they just like to be identified as multiple races, but maybe max 10 to 20% is Armenian in this community.
And then my last question, I think, is more directed. I believe we talked about mobile showers. I don't know if it was during the last meeting or the meeting prior, to see if we can possibly get some in Glendale. Am I remembering this correctly?
President Michaels, members of the commission, I know during our homeless Connect Day, we did have mobile showers, but that was just for one day. If any of the unsheltered homeless are interested in taking showers, they can go to Essentia. Of course, they got to fill out the paperwork, meet with our outreach staff, or meet with Essentia outreach staff and take a shower. A location having a mobile shower, I know we would have some issues in terms of water and drainage, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll refer that to Yvette.
President Michaels, Commissioner Asatrian, with regards to the need of showers, it hasn't been brought to our attention that there is lack thereof. Not only Essentia, but clients are also able to shower with YMCA programming and other Salvation Army, Catholic Charities. So different programs offer the shower services. With mobile showering, we would require mobile units. It would require staff supervising and managing specifically for the special needs population and make sure that's ADA requirement, and we would need the site, et cetera. All the logistics come with that. We do have mobile showers maybe about 4 times a year during our homeless count, also with our Homeless Connect Mental Health Service Day, and then another service day that's offered through the city organized by other organizations. And there is a mobile shower that works in LA that sort of drives around that requires specific permitting. We can look into that if that's the direction. Again, that's something that's really not funded currently, and it would require at least a full-time staff managing and supervising during the hours that the shower would be available. But Essentia is available for showers daily from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. as long as the clients participate in the case management and or complete the paperwork to identify that they're homeless. And so they have staff supervising the showers at Essentia.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your report. You alluded to the ending homelessness among women by 2020, is that right? So does that mean by January 2020 when you do the count, or?
President Michaels, Commissioner Wolfson, yes. The way the federal government issues these regulations or regulatory deadlines is typically by December or January of the fiscal year of 2020. So by 2020, we are supposed to eliminate homelessness for women across the nation, not just in the city of Glendale. But in that means, though, what it means is that the HUD funding keeps prioritizing and shifting its focus. For example, 5 years ago was the veterans focus, and we had functional zero in Glendale. And so now the funding is being shifted for families and children and female-headed households fleeing domestic violence potentially. So that would be the focus. Ideally, by 2020, there should be no homelessness in our region. And so through the Measure H funding, at least through the county, the idea is to keep adding permanent housing units county-wide to be able to house the 50,000 homeless that we have in LA County any point in time. That includes LA, City of Glendale, and Pasadena.
Do you think that that's at all realistic, that we won't have women that are homeless by January 2020?
Commissioner Wolfson, based on my experience, as long as the funding prioritizes the subpopulation, yes, it is possible. However, even when the funding shifts from one subpopulation to another, it just means that there's an area that still is a need in our community. So if funding is shifting from veterans to women and children or just women itself, clearly we have to make sure that we're focusing on that subpopulation where the funding is, but keep working with that aspect of it. My guess is that we still need to look at the rents in the community and work through the affordable housing crisis nationwide we all are dealing with. At the same time, identifying opportunities to be able to partner with landlords and any new development to be able to set aside some funding and units for homeless persons experiencing homelessness.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. Do we have any existing program or assistance for the children 18 and under? And do we have anything in partnership with GUSD for especially the children that are unsheltered? I see there's 10. So are they able to attend school? And being that they don't have a residence, how is GUSD identifying those, and how are they able to have them attend school?
That's a great question, President Michaels, Commissioner Wu. Yes, so the GUSDs, we actually have a board of director from GUSD's team, Diana Hill, on the Homeless Continuum of Care board. And Dr. Magrin and Diana Hill work with the continuum to make sure that their counselors, anytime they identify a homeless family in our GUSD systems, they're connected back to the continuum of care programming, being that if it's the city or Essentia. Anytime we identify a family that's in our community, what we coordinate is to make sure that the families transfer their children into the local schools. If they are unsheltered, the first thing we need to make sure is that they're connected with Essentia, which is our coordinated entry to the system. Then we quickly work with the families to get them into rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, and or other available resources as they are in our system. And so with the families that we had identified during the point in time count, they've already been integrated and engaged with Essentia, and our goal is to quickly get them back into any affordable housing in the community. Sometimes they're not able to stay within the community, especially now since the school is off. So we look at next community that might be available to make sure that the kids go to the school where they would be living, so that there's no issues on transportation.
So does a GUSD offer any assistance beyond just getting them enrolled? Do they give them any vouchers for meals or lunch?
So Commissioner Wu, I believe that they actually have a wide range of services, being that one of the requirements for GUSD is to have a McKinney-Vento case manager, which deals with the homeless population. I know that they provide the back-to-school backpacks, the support aspect of it. They provide clothing vouchers. They provide food vouchers. Oftentimes, they also have some once in a while funding for motel vouchers if in the event it happens on off hours. However, the integration between GUSC and city staff is that anytime they encounter a family, they call us and contact us quickly as possible, and we're able to get on that, to get the family into a service. Are there any families, staying in their cars? Potentially. Until we're able to identify them, we're not able to connect them to services, and that's the purpose of our outreach team that goes out in the community every day, tries to engage the clients and find out if there's new homeless persons. But they do offer more than just meals and vouchers and connect them to services. They also have psychiatrists and I believe psychologists on site to be able to provide that services to the student as well as their adult parents.
I have one last question. So those, you just mentioned psychiatrists and psychologists, are they performing their services only in English or any other language besides English?
In terms of Commissioner Wu, in terms of GUSD, I believe that there are, if I recall, there's a couple of psychiatrists that speak Armenian, Spanish, I'm not sure if there's any other specifics. I would have to get back with you on that as soon as I learn from them. However, I know that with Essentia, translation is provided in multiple languages. Didi Hirsch has available language services, and part of the federal funding requirements, if a participant requests an interpreter or a translation, there is an agency that our case managers call to be able to translate for services. However, I'd have to get back with you on GUSD's staffing. I'm not as familiar with that as I should be.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item.
Next is 7B3, Administration CIP Update.
Good afternoon, President Michaels, members of the commission. I get the honor of presenting some of the projects, capital improvement projects that were completed, some that are in constructions, other in different phases of either the EIR or the design phase. And I'd like to extend some credit to our colleague, Peter Verheilig, for putting these reports together. I get to the fun part, he gets to the heavy lifting. So first, we'd like to talk about the Carr Nibley Playground replacement. We presented this as part of our Park Services report last month because it was a joint effort. Our staff removed the existing playgrounds, got the site ready, and the capital project folks completed the installation of both playgrounds. The project completed in May. Project cost was $675,000, and both projects, as you had seen previous pictures, are displayed here. The one on the left is Carr Park, and the one on the right is Nibley Park's playground. Civic Auditorium exterior improvements. Now, some of these date back several months because the CIP project updates come to you, I believe, once a year. So some of these projects are listed here from just kind of last time we had presented to you. So the Civic Auditorium exterior improvements included the canopy, the northern entrance was removed, painting of the entire exterior. The exterior lighting were replaced, about 26 of them, and then we added some awnings at the south entrance. Project was $335,000 in construction costs, completed in November. We are currently working, our crews are redoing the landscaping. We've started in the front of the auditorium. You should see that completed by the end of May, maybe like mid-July. And later we're gonna shift down towards the south end and the east end of the west end of the facility to be able to finish the landscaping. And here's a picture of the, looking at it from Verdugo, the east side of the auditorium. Gloria Park, another project that was completed. This was replacement of existing irrigation, electrical upgrades, the water lines within the facility. Project cost was $650,000. The only thing remaining with this project was the tennis court lighting, which we started working with vendors and our concessionaire at this site. We're testing different lighting, so which one worked. We've identified one that works best. Hence, we started that process. I believe end of July, we should complete the entire installation of the tennis court lighting at Glorieta as well. After which, we'll be resurfacing the courts, and pretty much Glorieta Park is going to get an overall upgrade, entire park. Duke-Majan Barn Nature Education Center, the mechanical improvements. I believe Commission visited the site after these improvements while we were in between phases of studying the Nature Education Center, which we'll talk about later on. The project included heating, ventilation system, HVAC, plumbing and electrical work. The project cost was $805,000, and altogether the project completed March, as in the final documentations that were submitted were completed all in March. But earlier on, about August or September, is when most of the construction of the project was completed of 2017. And here is the inside of the Duke-Majan Barn Education Center. Now, interior improvements and restroom building, these are back-to-back. This one is in design phase currently. We had brought this project to Commission several months back in November, I believe. You gave us your feedback. We took it to Council in December. We got the okay from Council on the conceptual design. We're working with our architects, Gwen Pugh, and they are currently working on the schematics. And as you heard Mr. Bulunika mention, we're going to go in July and get approval to start doing the construction drawings as we move forward with this project. Construction budget is $2 million, slightly over $2 million, and we're looking at the start of construction in 2019. And this is what the current schematic design is looking like. I don't think this works, the pointer, but at the north end, you see the little counter area would be your information desk as people would enter. Here we go. This is the entrance, the main entrance. This would be a check-in and information desk. Here's an area where could be educational seating that you can have lectures. All of these items that are listed in the middle, these are foldable, and they're going to be stored away during events. These circular things are actually screens that are going to drop down, and there's going to be some educational videos that show. This is the children's area that they can actually have fun and educational activities. As you notice, based on your feedback, this would be the steps going down to the lower area and out towards the grapevines. Fremont Park, this project we brought to you on a couple of occasions. The project has gone through the master planning phase. It is currently getting reviewed by Building and Safety, permitting. More than likely, we're going to have all the permits in place the next couple of months, and then the bidding process will start. We're looking at the construction of this project maybe late winter of 2019, which means December, January, to looking at maybe spring of 2019 as a likely timeline for us to start the construction. And we're estimating about a one-year construction. The project is estimated, the engineering estimate is at the moment $12 million. And as you know from the previous meetings we've had and presented this, the 8 tennis courts will remain. 4 of them will shift to make room for the new community building and the tennis center. It will be 2 basketball courts that are going to have overlay with pickleball. The playground that used to be in this location, actually is currently in this location, is going to shift towards the center of the park for more safety of the children. It's going to be an expanded play area. We're going to have a water play feature over here, and then an artificial turf soccer field that currently doesn't exist. There is some activity there, soccer play. We're using the same exact space to build an actual field that will be manned by our staff and programmed. I can almost guarantee that's going to be booked all the time because we already have a very high demand. And then we're also building yet another restroom to accommodate, because the 2 restrooms existing, one in this location where the current waiting pool is, and one closer to the tennis courts, they will be demolished. And then we'll have the community building will host a restroom that's accessible from the outside, as well as a new restroom in this location. And picnic shelters, group picnic shelters, because this park is very popular on the weekends with birthday parties. Riverwalk Phase 2. If you're familiar with Riverwalk, the current Riverwalk Phase 1 actually goes all the way to Flower Street, and there's an exit to the street, Flower Street. Over there, we built a bridge that goes across to connect Phase 1 to Phase 2. Phase 2 is yet another half a mile stretch that ends over where Verdugo, Wash, and the river actually meet. We're calling it Confluence Park. That project is scheduled to complete in August of 2018. Project cost is $2.1 million. About 70% currently is completed of the project. Here's a picture of at the lower end. This is the picture of the bridge. And here's yet again the bridge looking over to connect Phase 1 to Phase 2. Cerritos Elementary, this project is currently in the EIR stage, in this case, mitigated negative declaration. We should be presenting that in the next couple of months. We're finalizing the report we got back. And project essentially takes the turf area within Cerritos Park, within Cerritos Elementary School, and convert it into a U12, under 12 artificial turf soccer field, multi-purpose field. And then we're looking at expanding the existing park restroom, because with the soccer fields, we're looking at increased activity, and to be able to accommodate the activity, we want to expand the existing restroom, as well as some other upgrades within the area facility as necessary. And here's the schematic layout of what we believe it would look like. We're shifting it to this location, is where currently the turf area is. And some of the other activities and amenities that are within the school, we're having to shift and move them around to accommodate. We've held meetings with the school principal and some of the teachers, got some of their feedback, and we're looking at incorporating all of their ideas into the project, so all parties involved have had their input. And then once the mitigated negative declaration is ready for public review, we'll go back and start holding the public meetings after that and start fully going into the schematic designs and going to design development. Wilson Middle School is also a project where we are working with GUSD in building a multi-purpose soccer field. This will be U14. It's a little larger. Artificial turf field, as well as we see in the next slide, we'll have a practice field alongside of it. We're looking at regrading some of the basketball court areas to enhance the existing facility, as well as build a restroom so that when the children are using it on the weekends, nights and weekends, we're looking at using the schedule at this facility, they would have a public restroom that's not within the school properties. It's outside, freestanding on its own. This project is currently in the EIR phase, looking at likely completion of the EIR in October of this year. Project estimate is $5 million. And once the EIR is released to the public, review comment period is done, we'll start holding the outreach meetings after that with the community. And here's the schematic that we've developed. It'll expand. As you note, this is the U14 multipurpose field. This is the practice field, and the restroom location, along with the storage for the grooming equipment to be stored, will be going in this location. What you see in blue are solar panels. This is a Glendale Unified School District project. They're currently in construction, and they have this project at a couple of facilities at this location, as a matter of fact, as well as at Cerritos Elementary. Hence, we've had to move our designs to accommodate their solar panel as well as our requests and needs for the facility. Central Park Master Plan, this project is spearheaded by our Economic Development Department. The master planning includes the Central Library Adult Recreation Area and the general Central Park, with the Armenian American Museum being built right onto the turf lawn area at the Colorado. And all this project combined, we'll be looking at a very good enhancement of the facility. It is going to be linking the park, Central Park, to through the Mona passageway to Brand and to all the activities there. July is likely the month we're going to go to council and ask council for to look at approval of the final schematic designs and the master design of the block. This was presented to council a couple of months back, and they gave us the okay and gave us direction as to how to proceed with the schematic design. Current budget for this project is $2.3 million. And here's what the consultants had come up with. Right in this location, what is the southwest corner of the current ARC Central Park, is where the museum is going to be placed. ARC is in its current location. As you know, the library is where it's at currently. This location over here, where there is the parking area for the library, is going to be converted to a park with a play feature, children's play area, likely looking at considering water play feature, as well as this area is very forested, so the concept of a forest, very nice, natural, peaceful setting in that location. And this area will remain turf, and the museum will have a parking garage built. It's subterranean parking garage, and there's some logistical and agreements being still worked out between all parties. But this is, at this time, the concepts that we came up for the Central Park Master Plan. Glendale High School tennis courts. This actually dates back quite a while. As some of you may know, during the ARC construction, the tennis courts that were removed as part of its mitigation, we were required to build tennis courts at other facilities. We identified the Glendale High School. They have 6 tennis courts. We got into an agreement with the district in renovating those tennis courts and being able to use it on nights and weekends. Well, we had done the design of the tennis courts and the restroom building. During that time, Glendale Unified School District wanted to incorporate the restroom into their larger aquatic facility. And we took a step back, allowed for that to happen. And they're still working out all of the design elements of the aquatic facility, the restroom. We had received the DSA approval for this facility. And DSA approval is only good for 1 year. So we would have to go back and redo the designs. We're negotiating with a consultant about making some changes, adjustment based on what the district will do with the aquatic center and the restroom facility. So I guess stay put with this project. We'll give you updates as we go along. It has been timely. It's taken some time, but we want to make sure the project is done in collaboration with our partners at the district. And rough estimate for this project is about $800,000. Lower Shoal restroom and picnic area rehabilitation. The Lower Shoal restrooms we identified as a project to improve the restroom facility, the roof lighting, the plumbing, the electrical upgrades, as well as making ADA accommodations. And we're also looking at the picnic area, the picnic tables, the canopies, to get a facelift, make sure the tables are replaced and the area is ADA accessible. We currently have $450,000 in CIP funds for this project, and we're working with WLC Architects. The designs for these projects should come back to us mid-September. Maple Park All-Inclusive, this project has been ongoing. We're working with Lawrence Moss Associates, LMA, and along with Landscape Structures, who are playground manufacturers. They're developing the Shane's Inspiration All-Inclusive Playground for this facility. They're drawing up all of the architectural designs that building and safety requires for approval, and we're looking at mid-July to have most of the bid packet available for it to move forward to the next phase of the project. Currently, we are funded $825,000 for this project, and it will go at the current location of the existing playground. And this is the concept that we have. Just for the record, we had gone to community meetings, and the community that came out with their ideas, what they want to see, and this is a result of community's input as to what they like to see, what concept would be ideal for Maple Park, the Shane's Inspiration design. Verdugo Park North Master Plan. We, after we met with Commission, I believe was April, we took the design concepts with your feedback to our council. And in May, council gave us direction to, make the focus of the facility of the project into the restroom, replace the restroom, do the upgrades, build a small community room along with it, look at an all-inclusive playground in that area. Council's direction was to maintain the road that drives through, not put in the DG path, keep it more natural setting. And now we're working with DVD, who is our architectural consultant, to look at amending their existing contract and moving on to the next phase of developing the construction documents for this facility. Again, the project budget for this project is $3.8 million. Nibley Park, this is working alongside Lower Shoal. We have the same architect, same timeline we're working at. Similar improvements, we're looking at rehabilitating the restroom. The biggest change here is the ADA path of travel from the parking area to this restroom. Currently, there isn't one. So once we start doing the restroom upgrades, it will require ADA path of travel. And as part of this project, we're going to be looking at that. Same timeline, we're looking at mid-September to have the early design concepts ready to go. And we'll come back to you with those concepts. Current funding for this is $350,000 in capital improvement funds. Pacific Park Shade and Water Play Feature. As you know, Pacific Park, we have two playgrounds. We have the 2 to 5-year-old area, which is the tot lot, and 5 to 12-year-old. We're looking at putting shade structures on those two facilities. As well as within the Pacific Pool, there's a deck area that there's some shade, but there's a larger area that we want to provide shade for our children using the pool to be able to get away from the sun, not always be under the sun. That project right now is in the design phase. They'll be preparing the construction documents. We're still negotiating the professional services agreements. We have about $1 million dedicated in a combination of CIP funds, CDBG funds, as well as enterprise funds. One addition to that is the current water play structure that we have, the water play feature at this park. We're looking at redoing that as well. So that's a very exciting project for us. And all three are working at parallel at the same time, and we are looking forward to seeing some of those design concepts as they come forth. Sports complex, concession building, also rehabilitation of the existing concession building and the trellis area. We're going to be doing some upgrades to meet ADA Title 24 accessibility standards. We have about $550,000 dedicated to this project through our enterprise fund, and RMCA is our consultant. They're finalizing the package through building and safety, going through all the permitting. Ideally, we're looking at later this year, 2018, to start construction. We still have to go through the bidding process, but this project is moving forward as well. We're probably going to have a lot of project in construction next year, and we'll be updating you as they have progress at these facilities. Upper Shoal Canyon Ball Fields, concession and restroom building renovation. As you know, you've given us feedback on this facility. We went out to bid. The bids came back, but they were a lot more higher than what we had budgeted for these. The budget was $650,000. The two bids, the lowest we had was roughly about $900-some thousand. So now we're working with our architect to get a proposal from them to revise. We're going to value engineer the work so we can get a project that's more manageable as far as available funding, and if need be, look for additional funding. But we're in the phase where we took a step back. We're going to look at the design, and then we might make some modifications, adjustment to the existing scope to be able to accommodate it with the funding we have, and or if need be, keep it very reasonable to find additional funding to complete the project. The project completion was estimated March 2008, but this might be delayed a little more because we start getting into the ball field season, and there's a challenge of having ball games going on and the project going at the same time. We will be doing the ball field, Field 1. Our crews will be completely renovating the ball field as was scheduled, yet this might come at a later time. Once we have a change in the design, the scope, we'll have a better idea what the engineer's value estimate is going to be. We'll proceed with those and come up with a timeline that's going to work best for all parties involved for the construction of the restroom building and the concession building. And this is the current project scope. You had seen this slide before, as well as the conceptual of the perspective of the restroom and the covered area for the seating. That concludes the projects for capital projects, our presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer for you.
I have two questions actually. One being, I know that we had talked about putting up a batting cage at the sports complex, and I know that we're still, I guess, mulling over our options, but have we made any progress? Have we been able to find a vendor or operator that's willing to, take on the project? Or
President Michaels, members of the commission, we do have an RFP. It's with the city attorney's office. About 2.5, 3 years ago, we did issue an RFP. We had challenges in finding an owner-operator. So we're going to revamp that RFP and send it out, hopefully within the next 6 to 9 months. But the plan is still to have a batting cage up there.
Still in the pipeline, yes. Okay. My last question is, I know that we had a lot of resident inputs regarding the vertical parks, and were we able to convey all those inputs to council for them to incorporate that in their direction for the vertical park improvements?
Yes, President Michaels, members of the commission, Commissioner Wu, we forwarded all of the information we received, all of the feedback we received from the community, from the commission in our report to council. And yes, council took all comments into consideration when they gave us their direction as to what they would like the facility to look like. And so the design, the final design is a combination of the public input, commission input, and council's view of what the facility should look like. And we even had members of the public attend the council meeting, give their feedback during the council meeting, and they were well received by council. And again, the final design will reflect all of the comments received from the public, as well as commission members and staff.
President Michaels, members of the commission, basically what we'll be working on, the direction that council gave us is a ground level all-inclusive playground, replacing the existing restroom with a patio, and including a community room. The entire building should be no more than 1,800 square feet. They don't want us replacing or taking away any trees, so we're going to leave the trees as is. We will be replacing the picnic tables at the north end of the park and also at the south end of the park. No new perimeter walk path and no historic village. So that's what we're going to be working on.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other specific comments? Thank you for the extensive report. Next item, please.
Next is 7B4, Recreation and Community Services.
Good afternoon, President Michaels, members of the commission, city staff. My name is Sabah Garavidian, Senior Community Services Supervisor with the Community Services and Parks Department. So briefly, I wanted to go over some of the activities in the Recreation and Community Services Community Center section we had during the month of May. Here's a brief staff chart. I didn't include all of the events that we did in May, just some major ones to take note of, and then we'll go over each of these with some pictures. To start off, we started off the month with the Vertigo Mountains 10K trail run and hike. Here you see some pictures from the starting line, the finish line, the pre-race packet pickup at Dick's Sporting Goods, as well as the post-race pancake breakfast. We had about 800 people start the race this year, which was higher than our last year's number of about 760. We followed Vertigo Mountains 10K with the Glendale Dodger Night on May 11th. We sold over 600 tickets for this event, and we sold out the event. As was customary with Glendale Dodger Night, we get a ability to get up on the big screen, so there we are on the big screen. And then on the lower right, I wanted to take note, Glendale Dodger Night was the night we launched our My Glendale Teens Instagram account, taking a picture with that bobblehead statue in the background. So My Glendale Teens, which I'll get into in a little bit, was launched on that night as well. Moving forward, as if you didn't know, May is Older Americans Month, so we went up to the City Council and accepted a proclamation designating May as Older Americans Month, and in celebration of Older Americans Month, we had two events take place. One was the Senior Street Fest held at Maryland Paseo, where we took all of our meals participants at the Adult Recreation Center and said, time for you to get outside of the walls and go have lunch at the Paseo. So we set up shop at the Paseo and served them lunch, provided live entertainment, had a bunch of vendors there as well, providing various resources from health screenings to insurance companies to anything of the related issue. Like for the seniors, they took advantage of it, they enjoyed it, and next day, business as usual back at ARC. Special thanks to Adventist Health and the Live Well program, who sponsored both the Senior Street Fest and the 90 Plus. And the next two pictures on the right are pictures from our 90 Plus celebration. One is of who she calls me boss, I call her boss, is Gina Maud, a 90 Plus honoree. And then on the lower right, the lady in the middle is our centenarian honoree, celebrating her 101st birthday this year. And the 90 Plus celebration is our opportunity to recognize all those in the greater Glendale community who reach the age 90 milestone or older and celebrating their birthdays in one big birthday celebration at the facility. Moving forward, the Youth and Family Services section had a pretty eventful month of May, from launching My Glendale Teens to having a special teen night out at downtown Central Library on May 25th, continuing their weekly visits at Maple Park and having teen night out, having their volunteers help them out, whether they visit their high schools, Daly, Hoover, or Glendale High School, or having the volunteers come and help us out with Vertigo Mountains 10K by stuffing the goodie bags. Youth and Family Services has been coordinating the volunteer aspect for the teens, organizing the teen night outs at both facilities, and still doing the workshops. What's cool about the May 25th Teen Night Out event at Downtown Central Library is the library department actually allowed us to stay in the library exclusive of any other member. So they kept the library open just for us and our teens, so that our teens could feel comfortable in discovering what's new in the library, from the maker space to the sound space to all the rooms that are really a good opportunity for them to take advantage of that they may not have seen. Again, One Glendale After School Youth Sports Program, the third year came to a conclusion with our Soccer Season Championship Day. What's noteworthy about the Soccer Season Championship Day is Cerritos Elementary School won the soccer championship again, making it the third consecutive year this school has become the soccer champions. Also, with the end of the season, we continued with our real game experience for our participants in this program, and on May 25th as well, they went to StubHub Center down in Carson to watch a LA Galaxy game, and we had 45 kids and about 5 staff participate in the event. Some of these kids had never been to a live sporting event before. Some of these kids had never been to a real soccer match before, so it was a really good opportunity. And it's a good way for us to tie in the benefits of sport and staying disciplined, eating right, being physically fit, and where it may lead you. No promises, but where it may lead you, if you stay on that right path. And we try to coordinate with the colleges and see what the college seasons and the sports have in common in terms of flag football season. We took them to the Rose Bowl and watched the UCLA-Colorado football game. When the college seasons are off with our One Glendale program, we go to the next best thing, whether it's a level up or down. In this case, twice we went level up. So the kids went to a Laker game after the basketball season, and here they are at a Galaxy game after the soccer season. STAR, Students Training as Role Models program, which the program takes place out of Pacific Community Center. Also participated in Glendale Dodger Night this year. With May being Mother's Day, they did some Mother's Day crafts, and the Glendale Association of Realtors continued their weekly sponsorship of feeding the kids dinner. So each week they alternate between the association's realtors, and one realtor or a couple of realtors will provide lunch, dinner to the program participants. And typically once a month they go on their outing, and this year they went to Glendale Dodger Night. And then coming to our last one, Trails and Open Space Program. We had a nearly sellout crowd at our Compass and Map class on May 5th at Brand Park, and then followed by our May 12 Glendale Narrows Riverwalk Workday, and then our May 19 Wilderness Workday at Duke Major Wilderness Park. And that's pretty much it for my presentation, if you have any questions.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next is 7B5, Park Services.
President Michaels, members of the commission, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for you this evening because it's late. But we do have the written report. For the month of May, we completed 117 work orders, of which 66 were completed by groundskeepers and 50 by the irrigation crew and 1 for pesticide application, for total labor hours of 737 hours for this month. And we'll come back to you next month with a presentation of projects completed. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you. Next item.
Next is adjournment.
We stand adjourned.